really deep down understand why you're feeling unhappy. Sometimes people think that with more money or with more flexibility at their job or a different job, they're going to be happy. Really have a serious conversation with yourself, and because sometimes the answer is no amount of money really will sort of replace your desire to travel, your desire to spend time with your loved ones.
Welcome to the Quit Work podcast, 15-minute conversations with people who have quit their job and gone their own way. I'm Mark, and today I'm talking to Davide Migali, who quit his sales job at a legal tech company to go it alone selling digital photography equipment. Davide, welcome to the Quit Work podcast.
Hi Mark, thank you very much for having me today.
So I think you started out as a lawyer, Davide. What attracted you to the legal profession?
That is true. Although sometimes I try to hide the fact that I have a sort of a legal background. It's normally a conversation killer, and people tend to be sort of more guarded around you. So everything you say can be used against you. So I try not to advertise that much. I was attracted to the legal profession, actually to law rather than the legal profession, as I have discovered later on. Because I've always been interested in at the end of the day, how people behave and how people regulate themselves. All this, the architecture of society is this sort of agreement among different people they don't know each other, they need to regulate themselves. And how, if this, then that, like a sort of a program code for human behavior. That was really the attractive part for me. And I enjoyed a lot studying. I love my university time. What actually happened was the impact with the legal profession itself that I found extremely different from what I expected to. That was the first, maybe alarm bell that I wasn't on the right track and had to change.
In what way was it different?
Was it's like when people sort of, it's like tennis or table tennis, as you know that I'm a fan
Yes.
of table tennis. Like they're not the same sport. Like they it looks similar, but it's kind of different. And you may like both, you may not like both, even if you like one or the other. And especially, if you know how to play one, you're not necessarily very good at the other. And for me, it was so different. Everything I've learned, it was hard to apply. Different skills were needed. The reality of being a lawyer in Italy, that was my experience at the beginning. Very long hours. Be always available for the client. It was hard, and not a lot of satisfaction. That obviously was my personal experience, but I can tell you that many of my colleagues and former classmates, to this day they feel the same.
Yeah.
So after probably 4 or 5 years, I had a good career here in what now I'm back in my hometown in Italy, Trieste. And after that, I decided that I needed to change, like a big change. And I changed my settings and I moved to London.
And I think you took a job as a sales engineer for a legal software company. So that must have been a big step.
I wish that the transition was, that smooth. the reality is how I think sometimes we place ourselves into, we have such limiting beliefs of what we can do and what it takes to do certain things. And it's fascinating how, you can come from a completely different background. But if you want to apply yourself, if you're interested, if you have a natural curiosity, you work hard, like everything, otherwise no results are guaranteed, then you can move in different ways, and especially in ways that you couldn't anticipate. For me, that was the biggest takeaway. Sometimes we plan a little bit too much, and we are not aware of how, we have such a limited information about how the world works, how, what we could do in a different place, what kind of job exists, what kind of opportunity exists. And we are confined within the very limited information we have. So when I moved to London, my decision was I just need to change. This is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. I know I can do it, but there is no, there's no point of sort of settling at that point for something that is suboptimal. And say, okay, let's go to the big city, the big smoke, and see, what it's like to live there. What it's like, what kind of people go there. What are the stories? Again, going back to how I enjoy human behavior and stories and people. At the end of the day, that's why I enjoy the most. And why not going to such a diverse place? And I was very, very much open-minded, knowing one thing though, that being a lawyer in Italy would not have helped at all finding any job in
Right.
London. That was the only certainty, which was immediately confirmed when I started applying for, I would say, any position. I just wanted to work. I just wanted to pay my rent and stuff like that. And there was nothing, but it was still fine. And then the first opportunity, a temporary job, working on a big case. That's how I started. And then that big case transformed into another case. And so I was working with this firm more and more. And then I discovered that, contrary to what happened in Italy, technology is used a lot to help the legal profession in the UK and in the US specifically. And I was immediately fascinated. It was like a second epiphany of saying, oh, but this is amazing. I was more interested into how processes are mapped, how software can help the legal profession, how artificial intelligence can sift through millions of documents and find an answer or find what's relevant or not for your case, that I decided to go all in on that specific blend of legal profession and information technology. And that's what got me into the software as a service domain. And eventually, through different roles, I then changed from a project sort of management type of role into a sales role. That was essentially the last job.
Yeah, it's a powerful mix if you've got two different skills, if you've got your legal background and you can move into software. That combination of different fields of expertise can be very powerful. We were talking just before we started recording about the power of moving to a different country as a way of shaking up your life. Could you say more about that?
When sometimes we are stuck in our own routine, in our own we set our own limits, or society set us for us those things, or our friends, our circles sort of define where we can move and what we can see sometimes. And it's so powerful to completely shake this reality and say, okay, now everything is going to look different, smell different. You're going to hear different sounds. Your brain doesn't have the same point of view, which is obviously unsettling to an extent. It's powerful stuff, but it allows you to build and create new connection. And you don't lose the past. You finally get, uncover a little bit of that, dark side of the moon that it's our, what our life and what we could do. And I find this so powerful, and it's really incredible how, to the point that we're saying exactly that. Maybe it should become a habit. It's just it gets increasingly difficult. I don't want to make any excuses, but there are increasing constraints to one's personal life. The family, sometimes health. Personal relationships, all sorts of things. It gets increasingly difficult. So I would say if I could go back, I would start immediately. I would, I remember distinctly had the chance during university to spend 1 year abroad, and I was fearful. I was fearful of lots of things. I was fearful, being left behind in my course, not being able to, and now literally jump at the opportunity.
I've heard people say that you should uproot yourself once every 7 years in your life, and obviously that's a completely arbitrary time frame, but it's a powerful idea, being able to uproot yourself like that, given the constraints of your life. If you're able to do that, it can be a very powerful force for change and for growth.
Yeah, completely. And there are certain changes. I mean, we can try to make incremental changes every day, but sometimes we feel we are a little bit stuck. And taking that plunge, taking the leap of faith, can really be transformational and beneficial. And one thing is clear: if someone is a person of, it's a good person, a person who wants to learn, a person who is open-minded, a person who wants to apply what he or she knows to benefit not just themselves but everybody else. The world, it's really a welcoming place, and we shouldn't be afraid. And again, we just see a narrow thing. There are jobs, people, opportunities, things to learn and things to do that exist only somewhere else. So we should really try. That's definitely something I truly believe in. And yeah, I'm doing it at the moment. I'm not in London anymore.
That's right. So let's get back to your sales job in London. As far as I understand, so many sales jobs, they seem to come with the relentless pressure to make more and more sales. What was that like for you? And what was it that finally made you quit that job?
It's you completely understood the scenario. There is enormous pressure. Imagine we are in the one of the tech capital, definitely of Europe, a very important place. Lots of venture capital flowing in. We need to hit our numbers. We need to investors need to be happy. We need to grow enormously, and that creates a lot of pressure. Sometimes, like in my case, you have a very good product. Sometimes it may not be the same story, and you have a great team. So that's a great combination. But the pressure is it's really enormous, and sometimes there are shortcuts that are taken. We fall behind on the type of customer service that we would like to provide, and these things over time can definitely take a toll on you. And then, to be completely honest, I probably could have gone like that for maybe forever, because this is the funny thing about life. So sometimes we, even if we know that maybe this is not what we want, but we are, comfortably unhappy in our, it's a type of unhappiness that we know we can control. It's a predictable, and we can live with it, at least for a certain amount of time. Obviously, in places like London, it's considerably better paid than what I could get in Italy or in other places in Europe. It's a great working environment, lots of progression. But then COVID happened. That's really the short stories, and I'm just another line into the sort of great resignation kind of phenomenon that more and more people talk about. Sometimes you already know what to do, but you still need that extra push. That extra thing outside of your control that forces you to, I had to stay home. I had to completely, again, change my routine. No more being like in the underground sardine can for a couple of hours per day. You have time to think, and sometimes, and now that you have that breathing space, you reflect. And again, especially at the beginning, it was like death is outside, waiting for you, and you are confronted with your own mortality. And you're like, okay, if something happens to me, do I really will I think of myself, I wish I could have spent a couple more weeks in the office. That's really what I wanted to do. Like, it's not, I don't think that many people will have that type of things. And so from the moment that COVID became really a pandemic and the moment that I quit, maybe a couple of months, literally my notice, it was so immediate. It really hit me so hard, and I had to take action. I already realized that time was running out for so many reasons that I couldn't hesitate any longer.
And when you handed in your notice, when you quit, did you have an idea of what you were going to be doing next?
Yes, I have always sort of experimented with retail in a non-professional way, and so I attempted different things, but then I found that digital photography was not only a passion of mine, but also something that could, be profitable enough to definitely be sustainable, and obviously giving me a different degree of satisfaction. Obviously, it's my own business. I always wanted to work, for myself, be my own boss and grow this type of business. And so the process was fairly smooth. Sometimes I think people put too much emphasis and too much fear. Like, people quit and join every day. It's not a pathological situation of the company. It happens. There are procedures, and if you have always been a professional, people will respect you for that, and people completely understand. Many people, maybe sometimes your manager too, feels exactly the same, and for different reasons they decide not to. There's a degree of empathy that's only if you go through the process you realize that actually people understand, and then you start having conversation with people that really they finally have someone to speak to. They say, I wish I could do the same, but I have XY constraint, or I'm planning the same thing, and I can finally tell someone I have a friend inside. Let's keep in touch.
Yes.
Once we're both outside of the gate, things of that kind. It's fascinating. I think it's another step to grow. How to terminate an employment relationship and how to deal with it and what you feel, and maybe a little bit of insecurity about what happened. Like uprooting yourself, it uncover a part of you that otherwise would stay covered, and so you wouldn't really know yourself.
So I've seen you describe yourself now as more flaneur than entrepreneur. So tell us a little bit. I like that a lot. What's your life like now?
I'm actually in the middle of an important business decision because I'm back in Europe. Because again, how can I say? I think people should really follow their dreams and their passions. For probably the most important reason, they realize they're not a dream-like as they imagined. Sometimes we leave a job and say, everything will be easier if I did X, Y for myself. I'm a natural, I can be a streamer, not a problem. Money will flow into it. I can create the new Amazon. And there are sometimes different challenges, but there are challenges as well. And one, for me, it was very big, is obviously the impact that Brexit had on retail. And I am now deciding what I want to do, if I want to have my company still based in the UK, with pros and cons, or if I instead want to be more exposed to the European market. Again, pros and cons in that respect. So, but it's important to try these things, because then otherwise we will always maintain a very idealized version of what life would have been. And instead, if you go through it, you're like, you know what? This is better, but you still have to work for it. and it's very, you finally have realistic dreams. In a sense that you understand what it means to follow your dreams truly, and sometimes maybe you didn't really want it, and the only way is to go through it.
So this has been a fantastic conversation, Davide. Thanks so much. Just a final question: is there anything more that you'd say to others who are not happy with their work but don't know what to do about it?
I would say be smart about how to handle the process. That's very important. Don't rush into anything. Gather enough information, make it work for you, but really deep down understand why you're feeling unhappy. Sometimes people think that with more money or with more flexibility at their job or a different job, they're going to be happy. Really have a serious conversation with yourself. And because sometimes the answer is no amount of money really will sort of replace your desire to travel, your desire to spend time with your loved ones, or things like that. And sometimes instead you really need that extra 20K per year. Have a serious conversation with yourself, speak with a couple of close friends, but really make a decision that is likely to impact your next probably at least 5 years of your life. So really dig deeper for the real question.
So listeners, if you'd like to connect with Davide, you can find him on LinkedIn by searching for Davide Migali, that's Migali, or you can follow the link that I'll post in the show notes. Davide, thanks so much for joining me on the Quit Work podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Quit Work podcast. I love talking to people who have taken the bold step of quitting their job to start living their true life. Join me for a fresh conversation every week. Subscribe to the podcast or the YouTube channel at quitworkproject.com. And if you have any comments on this episode, or if you'd like to tell your own quit work story, I'd love to hear from you. Contact me at quitworkproject.com or on Twitter or Instagram at quitworkproject. I hope you too find your way to quitting work and living your true life.